Hey, Jesse. Hey, Miles. Hey, Naman. Thank
Hey,
you.
Larry.
Hello. Oh, Mac,
Okay, well
you
done.
good, good. People are still coming in.
Sure.
We'll just give everyone a minute and then I'll introduce you. But thank you for being here with us.
Oh, it's an honor to be with you here with you guys today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, well, we've spent the whole month learning about Islam, so I think we're informed and intrigued all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's hard to sum up one faith always. That's always the hard part about this class.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll try to do my best.
We're a gentle group. No worries. All right, there's Max. All right. And so that means Leah can't join us today. Noman, if it's okay with you, I am recording this because one of our students, Leah, plays hockey and she has a hockey game.
It's
So
fine.
it'll just be for her. It won't be for public consumption.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kaylee often comes in a little late, so we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to our last class on Islam. And as we often do at the end of studying a faith, we have a special guest with us today, Noman Hussein. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Can you tell us who you are and who you serve in the community? Because you're going to be much more thorough and accurate than I am.
Sure, sure. No worries. So my name is Noman Hussein. I am the Imam and religious leader at the mosque in Brookfield. We have, I'm with the Islamic Society of Milwaukee, which actually has three campuses in the Milwaukee area, one on the south side of Milwaukee, one in Brookfield, and one on UWM campus in front of the Student Union. So we also have a full-time school, which has about 1,000 Muslim students, and that's from K-5 to 12th grade. I was born and raised in Chicago. I've been in Milwaukee serving as an imam for the last 10 years now. Um, I'm extremely involved in, interfaith work, a lot of youth work that I do in my role, and other just clergy stuff that we all see our leaders doing at our places of worship. Um, I actually studied initial studies of the Quran in Chicago, and then I traveled to South Africa where I spent 8 years in seminary. So seminary was in South Africa in Johannesburg. That's where I was for 8 years. That's where I did most of my studies, and then after I got back is when I got married, and then we moved up to Milwaukee. And I am a father of five beautiful children. So it's that's a summary of I guess what I do and who I am.
Thank you. That was very thorough. Well, we're just going to go around and each say our names and maybe where you live, or if you want to say something about yourself. And then, Noman, how we usually do this is we've got the questions that I sent you ahead of time, and the kids will just each take turns reading one
Sure,
and then listening to each other.
sure.
So, who wants to start just by saying who they are and something about themselves? Actually, I'll start because I'm talking. So, hello, I'm Reverend Kimberly. Noman, I'm a reverend now. I wasn't a
Oh,
reverend when
that's,
I met you. I've been
were
ordained.
you interning?
I
I can
was.
remember you were interning. Yes, yes.
Yes, I was. I got to meet Noman when I was working in Brookfield at the one of the other Milwaukee churches with Reverend Suzelle Lynch at the through the interfaith group, and actually got to visit the mosque too when I was taking my some of my interfaith classes. And what do I want to say? I'm a potter. There you go. I'm a clay artist as well as a minister and a mom.
Very nice.
And I'm gonna call on Miles.
Um, I'm Miles, and something about myself. Hmm, this is a tough one. I don't know why, but it is. Uh, let's see. Uh, oh, sure. I started a couple weeks ago. I started a shoveling business with my friend, but like directly afterwards, everything warmed up. So it was not very profitable. So that's me.
Foiled by
I,
the sun.
yeah, no, I guess it gives you time to plan for next winter. Now you got get your game plan together. Yeah.
Nice. Vera, can you go next?
Hello, I'm Vera. I'm 11, be 12. No, I'll call on Kaylee.
I'm Kaylee. I'm 13 now, and
What's she gonna say?
I don't know. I feel like I should add something else, but I don't know what to add.
That's okay, Kaylee. You can just call the next person. If you think of it later, you can jump in.
I don't know who's all gone yet, but
Me and Miles and Vera and Noman have gone.
okay, I'll do Jesse then.
Thanks, Kaylee.
Am I? Okay. Hi. So my name is Jessie, and I've volunteered and worked with the youth at our church for many years, working as an advisor with the teenagers, and I'm just grateful to be here learning now with these grades as well. So yeah, that's me. I will call on, let's see, James.
My name is James, and I'm currently 11, and I'm gonna call on Max.
Hello, I'm Max. I am 14 and I do not have full range in my left arm. And I will call on Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb. I work with Kimberly on staff at First Unitarian Society Milwaukee as the youth program coordinator. And I've been a dancer my whole life. And I'm going to call
I think that might be everyone.
Kaylee went, James went. I think we are.
Yeah,
I think everybody
we're-
went already. Yes. Okay.
Nice. All right, y'all. Do you all have your questions in front of you, or do you want me to put them in the chat?
Can you put them in the
I can put them in the chat, yes. All right. Miles, you have the first one.
Okay, so were you raised Muslim or did you become Muslim later in life? If you were raised Muslim, in what in particular kept you involved? If you became a Muslim later, what in particular drew you to it?
Alrighty. So I was born Muslim. My parents are from India, and they moved here in the 80s. And then I was, later on born here in Chicago. My parents were Muslims. I believe their parents were Muslims. My great grandparents were Muslims. But eventually, in our ancestry, we were probably Hindu. We were probably not Muslim at some point. And one of our forefathers probably converted. So me personally, though, I was born Muslim. I was raised a Muslim. I didn't come from a really religious background initially. My parents weren't really religious, but there was something that they felt important to send me to a Muslim school in Chicago. So I started my schooling at a private Muslim school in the Chicagoland area. That then motivated me to go on and memorize the Quran. So by the age of, so I finished up fourth grade or fifth grade, and then I went on to seminary, local seminary in Chicago, where I memorized the entire Quran in Arabic. Now I'm not Arab, I'm Indian, and I don't I didn't know the Arabic language at that time. All I knew of the Arabic language was how to read the language, because that's what we teach all of our kids. So once, even my kids now, we're teaching them how to read the Arabic language because they recite the Quran, they try to memorize some of it. By the time I was, let's say, 11 or 12, I had memorized the entire Quran from cover to cover, about 6,000 verses, about 600 pages, in Arabic, a language that I did not understand. But I could recite it very, very accurately and beautifully. And that then I think motivated me. Sort of that, I guess that path motivated me then to move on to seminary in South Africa to sort of learn the Arabic language. So then I went on. The seminary includes you learn the Arabic language, so now you understand it, you know how to write, you know how to read and speak, and so that helped me really understand what I memorized. But then beyond that, right, different sciences of the faith that you would study in seminary. So I think that has really kept me involved and going. At the same time, I have friends from school who took a very different path, who may not be on the same path as I am, and I still try to keep in touch with them today. They have their own struggles of faith, and I think at some point I had my own struggles as well. But I think that environment, the type of environment that my parents put me in at a very young age, and then the environment that I continued to choose afterwards, and surrounded myself with people of knowledge and people of religion, has what kept me, strong and on the path, and kept me involved. After I came back from seminary, it wouldn't make sense for me to go and start my own business or to do something else. So that's what motivated me to get into ministry and to get into becoming an imam at the mosque. And I said, I have all of this, I've studied all of this. And in America, by the way, just as a fun fact, I'm probably part of a first generation American born Muslim imams, right? So I didn't have an imam who was American born when I was growing up. So it was hard to relate to the imam. It was hard to relate to the religious leader. So I found it important that the few of us that actually took on this, and this is why we had to go overseas in studies, because we didn't have local full-time seminaries that offered like the full courses. So we had to go overseas. And then now we have the first generation of imams who have established seminaries here locally. So for the next group of youth who want to go and study, or adults who want to study, they could do it locally as well. So in a nutshell, I think that's what's kept me involved and sort of kept me a Muslim today.
Thank you. So you weren't thinking you would go into ministry when you were young. You just had a motivation to memorize the Quran?
Yeah, you know what it was? I think I didn't expect myself to go to ministry. So, where I come from, like India and Pakistan and that subcontinent area, it's the goal of every parent to make their children doctors, right? And so in my in my mosque, in our community, it's like every other person's a doctor, right? So for us, it was like that's the goal. That's the goal. Med school, get a degree, go to med school, become a doctor of some sort. So that was, something that we all had on in our minds. But I think that because it was really my parents who motivated me, I think, and the environment I was in, they knew that they saw that I had a gift of reciting. And so they said that we want you to use that gift. So go memorize the Quran so that you could then recite the entire book. And then that sort of motivated me to go on. Yeah. But again, I was very young. I came back as an imam at the age of 20 or 21. So I was very young when I started, serving my community.
Thanks. James, you've got the next question, which is a good one for the follow-up, actually.
What was your favorite passage? Well, what is your favorite passage from the Quran?
I think that's a difficult question. That's a tough one because there's so many different topics. I guess so many different aspects of the Quran that very, very powerful. But I think something that's universal, and something that can resonate with all of us is the verse of hope, where God tells us in Arabic, right? He tells us, "Oh my servants, oh my servants who have wronged themselves or who have transgressed the limits or who may have oppressed themselves, don't lose hope in God. Don't lose hope from the mercy of God, because God and Allah forgives all the sins. And Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. Allah forgives, and Allah is who we refer to as God in Arabic. Allah forgives all of your sins. So don't lose hope, no matter what you did, no matter what wrong you have done, no matter what you may have, committed in the past. God's mercy is far more encompassing than your sins. Is far more greater than your sins. And so that idea of hope, that encouragement of hope when we recite in the Quran is probably one of the most powerful verses. But again, if you want to go on beyond one, I mean, the descriptions of paradise are just so beautiful in the Quran, and the way that God talks about paradise and talks about how those who are righteous and those who um, believe that for them will be a special reward and a special, a place in the hereafter. So I think that, that itself would be, one of the more powerful uh, and favorite passages when it comes to meaning. When it comes to reciting, that may be different. So one is the reciting, like the melodious aspect of the Quran, the reciting aspect of it, and then obviously one is the meaning aspect of it as well. So there's some parts of the Quran you just enjoy reciting more because it's just very beautiful on the tongue and very powerful. And then there are others that just the meaning of it are so amazing as well.
Thanks. Are you ready, Vera?
Yes. What is your favorite Islamic morality tale or historical Muslim story?
Um, let's see. All right. So in the Quran, I'm assuming this doesn't have to be related to the Quran. It could be related to the life of the Prophet. When I think about beautiful stories, it reminds me of the stories of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was a man who was a person of empathy, a person of compassion, a person of mercy. And when you read his stories, you realize that many people who were touched by him were not necessarily touched per se by the message. Like he didn't have to go and preach necessarily, but they were more touched by his character. They were more touched by his approach. And that's, when I read stories about him, that's what really, really moves me. So there's a beautiful story that we hear. Now, just to give you a little context, the Prophet Muhammad was born in Mecca, was raised in Mecca, and Mecca was a pagan, it was a pagan community. And when the prophet became, when he presented his prophethood, when he received the first revelation and started to invite people to Islam, the community didn't like it, so they started to persecute the Muslims. They started to oppress them in whatever way, and at times there was an old woman who would actually bring every day her garbage and throw it at the front door of his house. So every day she would make it a part of her mission to do whatever she could to make his mission difficult. So she would come and throw her trash on his doorstep. So every time or every morning the prophet would have to come and clear it off. And he knew who it was. He knew who it was. But again, he didn't respond with hate. And this happened for a long time. And one day when he came out, he saw no trash on his doorstep. So he says, "What happened to that old lady? Where is she today?" Someone said she was sick. So the prophet went to visit her when she was sick. And he says, "I heard you were sick. I didn't find trash on my path today. I wanted to come and see you to make sure that you were doing okay and offer any help and support that I can during your sickness." She was so moved by that. She said, "This is no way that a normal human being, an ordinary human being would react this way, right?" Um, there's another beautiful story where the prophet saw an old lady, an old person, with her belongings walking. So he stops really quickly. He was a young man. He stops. He says, "Let me help you with your stuff." So he grabs her stuff and he's walking with her to her house. In the meantime, as he's walking, she's again, the whole of Mecca was disturbed by the Muslims. Like there's this new religion, there's this new group, and they're calling towards one God, and they're calling towards a message, and people didn't like it. Everybody had their guard up. Everybody was on alert, high alert. So this old lady was telling this young man who was helping her, beware of Muhammad, stay away from him. He's an evil man. He is misleading our community. And she went on just verbally abusing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, this young man was carrying her stuff, continued to walk with her, got her home, put her stuff in the right place, and she finally asked, "You were very kind to sort of go out of your way to help me. What is your name?" And he says, "Well, my name is Muhammad." And she was so moved by that. She was like, that this is impossible, that an ordinary human being would react this way. And she then was so moved by it that she was somewhat forced to accept. She was like, "I have to. There's no way that I can deny the truth of character like this." So when I think of Muslim stories, and even the idea of Islamic history, I'm really drawn to those stories where it was about character. A lot of times there's this, and I know one of the questions may be coming up about the misconceptions about Islam. I don't think this is a major misconception, and so I won't. It's not answering that question. But one of the misconceptions about Islam is that Islam was spread by the sword.
Mm.
There's this misconception that Islam was spread by the sword and was forcefully put upon people, and that's one of the misconceptions. Actually, that is not true, and that is not how Islam spread. It was more about Muslims traveling, Muslims introducing the message and interacting with people, and that character of the Prophet, of the companions of the Prophet. It what motivated so many people to accept Islam in that time, in that era. And even today, I won't say that it's my character, because I think as human beings overall, we've we've lost beautiful traits of good character, right? We
Mm.
continue to see a decline in morality, a decline in good character overall. Like we see that in our society. So I won't say that that's what is attracting people to Islam, but there is something there, and that is why Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world today. Um, and if you, I mean, this is not something that I'm saying because I'm Muslim, but these are facts
Yeah.
actually, and these are facts that and there's actually, because of this fear in people have fear. This is why Islamophobia, if you heard the term Islamophobia, where there's a fear that Islam is growing too fast. There's some stats that show by 2070 Islam would be the largest religion, right? And so there's this fear that people have that, oh my God, what is going to happen if Muslims are a majority in the world? Um, because somehow we think that's evil or that's bad. And so I think about those stories, the stories of good character, and how the Prophet would respond to hate with kindness and love.
Thank you. Hmm. We did learn that it was the fastest growing religion, so we know we're aware that you're not just telling us because you're Muslim. Miles, are you ready? Go ahead.
So have you gone on Hajj? And if so, what was it like?
Yeah, so I actually haven't just gone on Hajj. I actually lead a group every year for Hajj. So except last year because of the pandemic, and we couldn't go last year, and it was very sad actually. And I'm really hoping that somehow, some way, we could go this year. But Hajj is, I think, for a Muslim, one of the highlights of our lives. It's one of those the most beautiful moments that we experience in life. It's the Hajj is obligated upon a Muslim once in a lifetime. You don't have to go every year. It's once in a lifetime, and it's obligated on those who are physically and financially able to go for Hajj, because Hajj nowadays is expensive, right? You probably have to put aside about 15 grand per person to go for Hajj. And for some people, that's just not feasible. It's just not doable. So if you're financially unable to go for Hajj, you're not obligated to go for Hajj. If you're physically unable to go for Hajj, right, you just physically can't take on the journey, because Hajj is a really, really difficult journey overall, then you are excused from it. So what is Hajj like? Um, it's a struggle. Hajj is difficult. I tell people Hajj is not easy. It's not a walk in the park. It's a difficult, um, especially I'm putting from perspective like an American Muslim guy, you know, someone who was born in America, grew up here. Going to Saudi Arabia is not easy, right? Number one, the heat, the humidity, right? That's one aspect of it. And then you're coming together with about 2 billion Muslims, right? It's a huge number of people that are sorry, did I say billion? That was a mistake, my bad. There's about 3 to anywhere depending on time, about 2 to 4 million people that are actually gathering together at one time in this one area and one place. And literally, you find people from every country you can imagine, every culture, every country you can imagine. There's someone from that place that has come for Hajj. So you have millions of Muslims every single year that have gathered together. So you are interacting with a lot of different people, and that's why in Hajj, if you're a very we all have different personalities. If you're a really outgoing personality, I have seen people. I'm not very like, I'm not an extrovert. I'm a more of an introvert, right? So I don't like just randomly go up to people and start talking to them. But I have people that are like that in my group, and they will say that, man, today I met someone from China, and I met someone from Maldives, I met someone from here, and it's just like you could just sit down with them and talk to them, and then there's this commonality, like I came for Hajj, you came for Hajj, hey, we're Muslim, and they'll be like, hey, how is Islam in America? Because all we hear about, again, now I want this is a disclaimer here, what the media displays Islam very different here than it does overseas. The media displays America very differently overseas as well. So just to be like, wait, how is Islam surviving in America? It's a country of Donald Trump, right? Or it's a country of hate and Islamophobia. How are you able to be a Muslim there? And we have to sort of explain to them, no, no, it's actually like we have so much freedom of religion, and yes, we do have the issues that we have and all of that, but it's just a very beautiful place. Hajj is really about commemorating the struggles and sacrifices of the Prophet Abraham. So when we go for Hajj, we're going to visit the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the holiest mosque. That's the direction we face when we pray. The Kaaba is, and maybe you saw pictures of it or you saw videos, maybe, right? Everybody is circumambulating, going around the Kaaba. That's the Kaaba. That's the mosque that we face. That's the holiest mosque in the world. That's the mosque that was built by the Prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael. And all of the different rituals of Hajj are actually related to the story of Abraham. So during Hajj, we slaughter an animal. We slaughter a ram or a goat or a sheep. And that is actually connected to the story of Abraham when he was asked to sacrifice. The story where he is told to sacrifice his son. And instead of the son, God reveals a ram from the heaven. And that is so that's part of Hajj for us, where we sacrifice an animal, remembering the sacrifice of Abraham. But but it's a very difficult, very unique, but very uplifting experience, because we know that anybody who goes for Hajj, the Prophet tells us, comes back with absolutely no sins on them. So it's like the day you were born. the Prophet uses this term, is as if you are a newborn baby with absolutely no sin on you anymore after you go for Hajj. And that's why people look forward to it. That I want to go to the house of God. And along with going for Hajj, we actually go and visit Medina, which is where the Prophet ended up living for 10 years and then passed away there. Because it's like we want to go and live that history. We want to see the places that he was. We want to be able to visit his grave and send our greetings to him, our our pray for him by his graveside, right? For ourselves and for our families and for him. And so this is the the experience of Hajj, right? Where did you guys see the videos where the men are all in two pieces of cloth? You guys saw that? Yeah, and that's another struggle. I mean, it's just so men, when you perform Hajj, men are not allowed to wear anything except those two pieces of cloth. One that covers the bottom of your body, and one that's covering the top portion of your body. Literally nothing else. And when you go for Hajj, we're not allowed to use any scented soaps. We're not allowed, while we're in that state of what's called ihram, when we're wearing the two pieces of cloth, we're not allowed to use anything that's scented. We're not allowed to cut our hair. We're not allowed to clip our nails. It's a total of 5 days. But imagine in the heat of Arabia, wearing two pieces of cloth and not being able to use deodorant, right? It is, and the heat already bothers you. Then you have millions of people. It's very congested traffic. It's really a journey of humbling ourselves. So when you're there isn't a special place where the rich pray and the poor pray. And that's the idea. The rich, the poor, everybody's wearing two pieces of cloth for the men, right? And everybody's standing next to each other when they're praying. Everybody's equal in the eyes of God when it comes to going for Hajj. So, nobody walks around that I'm a doctor, or I'm a business owner, or I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm a beggar, or I'm poor, right? I clean the streets for a living. Like nobody has like the title with them. Everybody, when they come there and they're wearing those two pieces of cloth, or they're praying and they're worshiping, it's the title, I'm a servant of God. That's what you see. I'm a servant of God. I'm just like the person next to me. And that's really what Hajj is all about.
Thank you. Go ahead, Vera.
Okay. What is your favorite thing about Ramadan? Do you celebrate it in any way?
Yeah. So Ramadan for us is actually starting in a month. So we start Ramadan in actually a little bit over a month. So April 12th is the first day of Ramadan. Um, you would think Ramadan would be difficult, right? We're fasting for the break of dawn till sunset. It's just, it's staying away from food and drinks all day. But there's something special about Ramadan. Um, I think my most favorite part of Ramadan is the aspect of community. So in Ramadan, it's everybody comes out, everybody comes to the mosque, and in Ramadan, every night in Ramadan, we have a special prayer, right, where we pray 20 units of prayer. So I'm sure, have you guys seen a Muslim prayer? How they pray? So you've gone through that, right? So we have, the bowing down and prostrating. So we do 20 units of those every night in Ramadan for 30 days. And more interesting than that is we actually recite the entire Quran in those 30 days. So the Quran has 30 parts. And so every night we recite one part in those 20 units by memory. So in Ramadan becomes interesting because I got to make sure that I'm on point, and I have to go revise. I got to make sure that I'm like not making any mistakes, that I got everything down word by word, and I'm then reciting it all in the prayer, one part, which is 20 pages, right? So 20 pages every night in the prayer. And by the end of Ramadan, we make a whole completion of the recitation of the Quran, and people look forward to that. the month of Ramadan for us is known as the month of the Quran, because that's the month where God initially started to reveal the Quran. So it's a very beautiful month. But then along with it, we make it very special for the family. Like for my kids, it's like we live in a very diverse community. But even though we live in a very diverse community, when it comes to like holiday like Christmas and Easter, these are like dominant holidays, and everybody's celebrating them. It's all over the place. It's on the movies and shows, and so sometimes my kids feel like, well, hey, I want gifts and stuff. So it's sort of, I always tell my own communities that, look, every community has its own religious traditions. And Islam has its religious traditions. We have Ramadan and we have Eid prayer. These are two amazing traditions, and we need to celebrate them, because back home, like we're different parts of the country where our parents came from, they actually celebrate there. They go all out when it comes to Ramadan. And as Muslim Americans, sometimes it's like we're concerned about assimilating. A lot of times, like, oh, we need to assimilate, like we need to stop, we need to be more like everybody else. And I tell people, no, you don't have to be more like everybody else. It's okay to be unique. It's okay to hold on to your tradition. It's okay to hold on to your belief system. You don't have to give it up because of where you live, or because it's being dictated to you by the society, right? That's what makes our country so beautiful and unique, that we're all able to practice in a unique way. So with my kids, we do this, so fasting, by the way, is not obligated until you hit the age of puberty, right? So usually around 12 or 13 is when kids start fasting or have to start fasting. My kids are young still, but they were so motivated that well, four of my three of my older sons ended up fasting all 30 days last year. My eldest is 8 now. He was 7 at the time. So 7, 6, and 5. They fasted all 30 days. And I said, are you sure? Because I don't want you to fast. You don't have to fast. Like, it's probably not good for you to fast. They're like, no, we got this and we want to. And they would wake up in the morning with us for the pre-dawn meal. They would have and then every evening at sunset, they would get the food of their choice. So like we rewarded them, like you fasted all day, so you get what you want. Like, tell us what you want to drink, tell us what you want to eat, and we made sure that we made it special for them, just sort of creating that vibe in Ramadan. So when it comes to the favorite thing of Ramadan, it really comes down to the community feel that we have, where every night we come together, and it takes us about 2 hours. So every night we come together and we spend about 2 hours in the mosque. Obviously last year we couldn't do that, and this year also it's probably going to be a little different. But thinking back, that's probably what I miss about Ramadan the most.
Nice, thank you. Miles, you have the next one.
Okay, so when did you do your shahada? If you how did you do it? In front of your faith community, your family, others? Were you nervous, excited?
Okay, so I didn't take my shahada. And the reason I didn't take my shahada was because I was born Muslim. So if you're born Muslim, you don't necessarily have to take a shahada. Um, and so, but however, because I'm an imam, I facilitate the shahada for many people. So I'll explain that to you, how that sort of works. Um, so I've had people who are in high school that accepted Islam. I have people who are in their 60s who've accepted Islam, from all different backgrounds, right? Who've accepted Islam. For some people, it's a challenge. They don't want to do it publicly because they feel a sense of pressure. They don't tell their parents. They don't tell their families. I've had people who converted but did not tell their spouse because they knew that it would tear their house down apart. So they became Muslim, but they were secretly Muslim because if their spouse found about it, they would probably, it would probably not end well. And so there are a lot of people who are hesitant because of that. And so it's always about just being welcoming and accepting that, look, it's, you do it on your terms, right? You do it how you're comfortable doing it. You want to do it privately, you do it privately. And other times there are people who do it publicly. So when we do the shahada, if someone's comfortable, we prefer doing it in a gathering with people around. We prefer doing it on a Friday when we actually gather for our the main prayer service of the week is for us is on Friday, right? The Jummah prayer. We try to do it on that day, and it's a moment of reflection for us who are born Muslim, who take Islam for granted at times because we're born into it. That there are people that see something in Islam that we take for granted. And so when someone accepts Islam and takes Shahada, a lot of times, if they're comfortable, they share their experience and what led them to wanting to accept Islam. There are some people who are led to Islam because of all the hate they see targeted towards Islam. They'll say, I wanted to learn about Islam because I saw people just hating on it and targeting it. So I wanted to learn about it. And when I did, I was moved by it. So I wanted to accept it. People will have different reasons. There are some people who said, I opened the Quran. I wanted to read it because of the talk, all the talk about how Islam is a violent religion. I wanted to read it, and when I came across some of these verses, I was so moved by it. I realized that this is what I want. There are some people who were moved by the character of another Muslim that they interacted with, that they became interested in learning about Islam. So when you do your Shahada, it could be done openly, it could be done privately. All you have to do, right, is say one statement or two statements in Arabic. And you don't even have to say in Arabic, we usually have them repeated in Arabic, but it's really about the meaning, which is Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, which means I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, God, and I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his messenger and his servant. Right? With that statement, that's the Shahada. So Shahada means testimony. Shahada in English, when you translate, it means testimony. So you're testifying. You're giving testimony that I believe that there's none worthy of worship except one God, and I believe there's none there that the Prophet Muhammad is his final messenger and servant. Um, and so yes, it's an exciting moment, especially for the person accepting, but even the community. Everyone's so excited. In Islam, that it's a concept of brotherhood and sisterhood. So we'll say welcome to this brotherhood of Islam, or welcome to the sisterhood of Islam, right? Where we're a community, we're a family, and many people are extremely nervous. There are some people who accept Islam because they want to get married to someone who's Muslim, so they'll accept Islam because of that. Because sometimes there are these restrictions that families or parents or communities will put that, well, and even the spouse, even if you're getting married to someone, they'll say, well, I'm not going to marry you if you're not Muslim, for example. So sometimes that will happen, and so some people do convert for the sake of marriage, as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we watched someone give their Shahada. There was a YouTube video, and I think
Okay.
they were formerly Christian. So that was a good review of what we kind of saw.
It's a very emotional moment for many
Yeah.
people. Very emotional, because it's like they lived a particular lifestyle all their life, and you know they're taking a huge step when they're taking the Shahada. And for many of them, I've heard them tell me that it feels like a burden has been taken off my shoulders. Like I feel light now. I feel like I've done what I needed to do. I found what I needed to found, and this burden has been lifted off my shoulders. So
Thank you. Kaylee, you are next.
Hi. Hi, I'll go away.
Kaylee has a little brother.
So I have, when you were a youth, how did you practice zakat? What was hard about it and what was meaningful about it?
yeah, zakat. So zakat is not obligatory until the age of puberty. Or until you actually own money. Zakat is only obligatory if you have a certain amount of wealth for an entire year in your savings. Okay, so that amount is usually around a couple $1,000s. So if you have a couple $1,000s saved for an entire year, Now you would be obligated if you are at the the age of puberty, you're older now, you would give. So as a kid, I didn't have anything, I was broke. So I didn't have to give much, but the concept of zakat was taught to us through sadaqah. Sadaqah is the Arabic word for optional charity. That is, everything. The Prophet told us that smiling is charity. The Prophet told us removing a harmful object from the path is charity. So a lot of times what we were taught as children was to give up something that's valuable to us, right? It could be anything, whatever is valuable to us. The concept of sharing is of the concept of sadaqah and zakah, right? Where you're sharing with others what you have, what's beloved to you, you're willing to give to others. And that's a concept that we're taught in our religion, that you are not a true believer until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. You would want for your brother what you would want for yourself. So as kids, we're taught the concept of giving up sometimes things that are beloved to us. So what we do in our house with our kids, right? My kids don't have money. They're not given money to keep it very young. But what we do with them is we buy a lot of gifts, and we'll tell them that yes, we're gonna buy these gifts, and we're gonna make sure in Ramadan we're gonna go and we're going to distribute them or donate them to the less fortunate kids. On Eid, well, a day of celebration, we will teach them that when we go to the mosque, we're going to take out money to give to those that are not able to celebrate the Eid the way that we celebrate it, so that they could also have an amazing celebration on the day of Eid. Just sharing with them those ideas that if you have toys that you like, that you're, you that are dear to you, that you need to also make sure that you're willing to give it up, so that it could bring happiness and joy to somebody else. Or if you have food that that you think someone else can benefit from, then giving up that food for those that may not have had a meal for a few days now. So that's how we sort of teach this concept of zakah and sadaqah. And zakah is, it's a deep concept, right? Obviously, giving what your wealth, and if you think about it in more modern times, right, zakat has to be given on your 401k. It has to, I mean, if you understand what 401k is, right, on your investments and your investment properties, and so you have to actually, you end up giving zakat on a lot of those things from a modern perspective. And our understanding today of what zakat is, anything that you've saved for more than a year from the wealth that you own is what needs to be given. And that's 2.5%. There's no questions about that. But beyond the 2.5% that elder adults have to give, we're also encouraged to give optional charity beyond that, beyond the 2.5. And 2.5 really isn't much. And when you put things in perspective, 2.5% of your wealth in savings it's a little portion that we're taught to give. And when you do the math and you think about it, if all Muslims, and sort of I address this to Muslims because it's an obligation for Muslims, is that if all Muslims took out 2.5% of their wealth religiously and diligently, like they did it properly, we could address a lot of the issue, a lot of the cases of poverty that we have in our own communities, in our own societies, and around the world. Like, just if we religiously, every person took a little bit out. See, zakat is not something that you can give to institutions to use to build. For us, zakat is specifically for the poor and the needy, right? Those who are actually homeless, those who are in need of food and clothing, those who are in need of their basic necessities, who don't have wealth, that zakat is for them. Okay, so that's the concept of zakat that even as youth you should think about, right? It's not just about whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. It's about all of us need to understand the concept of giving, right? Giving that which we love, giving to others what we would love to be given ourselves, right? Being willing to. And so again, a lot of times people think charity is monetary. No, charity goes beyond monetary, right? Being kind to someone is a form of charity. Smiling at someone, being gracious with someone is a form of charity, right? Making a person's life easy is a form of charity. Like I said, removing a harmful object off the path is a form of charity. Anything good that you do that is helpful to the people around you is a form of charity. So, yeah.
Thank you. And you've done such a good job. I want to say that speaking of a way to give back, if you want to make sandwiches this month for those who are hungry, join our lunch pack and love for doing that. You can see the link to that in our RE update every week. Thanks for the plug, Noman. I had to sneak mine in there too.
Awesome.
All right. James, do you have the next question?
What are the major misconceptions out there about Muslims, and what do you wish others better understood?
So, yeah, I think one of the major misconceptions that people have about Islam is that Islam is a violent religion, right? That Islam is all about killing and bloodshed. This is unfortunately what's been pushed by media as well. So I know that some of you obviously were not born when 9/11 happened, but 9/11 was a turning point for Muslims in America. It was a huge turning point for us. It was like it was tough for Muslims after 9/11 because obviously the media pushed the idea that these attacks were done by not people. They had to make sure it was Muslims who did it. And when you target, when you put that title, you target entire community. So after 9/11, after the horrific incident on 9/11, um, it sort of the media continue to push and people continue to push the idea that, oh, this was something that they were encouraged to do by the religion, and the religion encourages killing of people and killing of the disbelievers or killing of the non-Muslim. And for the next decade after 9/11, Muslims had to like really work on trying to address that misconception. There's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, right? There's a lot of Muslims. And if that was the teaching that the Quran was really truly giving,
Looks like we froze up. We'll give him a minute. My internet dropped off altogether earlier today, so we might be just spotty internet day. Mm-hmm. I think I got all the rest of you though, right? Yep, there he goes. We'll give him a minute to pop back on. Just realized too, I'm curious how many Muslims are in Milwaukee. I bet you we could find that out.
In the city of Milwaukee or the county of Milwaukee? Because
Probably
like Field would be the county, right?
Okay, that's a better question. You're right. Let's see, 20,000. Says Google. Says Dr. Google. Yeah, that's quite a few folks. More Muslims than Unitarians.
Wow.
Ah, you're back. Good. No, it's okay. You're muted right now, though. I lost internet earlier today. It might be that kind of day.
yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened. I just dropped and I'm like, wait, what's going on here? All right. So we were talking about, I think it was the last question where we were just talking misconceptions. So again, one of the one of the major misconceptions was really about how Islam is a violent religion, right? And I think a lot of Muslims, because of that, after 9/11, a lot of Muslim men who used to keep beards shaved their beards off because, again, they just felt it was a threat to there was a threat to their life to look Muslim. Many women who wore hijab after 9/11 took their hijab off. They're like, look, it's too dangerous to wear the hijab now. And it was very hostile towards Muslim. The environment, the people were very, very, it was, I mean, not everybody, obviously, I'm not saying everybody was, but the media was pushing such an agenda against Muslims that everybody was like, whoa. I don't know, one of the questions was, why do you think Islam is the fastest growing religion? A lot of times you don't know, but all the negative media that Islam got actually became the reason why so many more people started to look into Islam. So the rate of converts, the rate of Islam growth actually went up after 9/11. So although I mean, we've seen it, like we've seen the stats change where so many more people were interested in accepting Islam after 9/11 because they were introduced to it through the negative media. They wanted to see what the real truth was. And obviously, there are those who look beyond what the media will say and actually find the truth in the facts. And there are those who will continue to stick to what the media says and, you know, and hold on to that and not really search for the truth or facts about, any claims that are made. And by the way, I'm not here to say that the media is fake news. I'm not saying that. Okay, I don't support that idea. But when it came to Islam, it was literally non-Muslim, um, quote unquote, experts that would share what Islam was. And it was a warped understanding of what Islam truly was. So a lot of Muslims at that point, this is when they're like, wait, we have to get involved in interfaith. We have to make these connections. We have to try to do outreach work. We have to, get in front of people and truly show them and share with them the message of Islam. That's one. The second one, I think, is also the misconception about women in Islam, right? There's always this misconception that women are oppressed or women are subjugated, that women are less worthy than men in Islam. And that's another misconception that we generally have to, tackle with a lot of people. And a lot of times when I have interfaith groups coming to the mosque, those are the two areas that I try to focus on. The violence aspect, right? Is Islam violent? Does the Quran promote violence? And number two, the misconceptions around women and the role of women in Islam. Are women persecuted in Islam? Now, I want to point out for all of you, including the youth, a lot of times the practice of any religion is going to change by culture. Depending on what your culture is, the way you practice your religion also changes as well. And then at times we're not able to understand the difference between religion and the difference between culture because they're so intertwined that sometimes we're not able to differentiate between what is culture, what is religion. And that's what happens with a lot of Muslims. So we know in Saudi Arabia, right? They didn't allow women to drive there until last year. People will ask me all the time, is that Islamic? Like, does Islam teach that? And I said, no, nowhere in the Quran, nowhere did the Prophet say that women can't drive. I don't understand where this concept is from, except that it's a cultural thing. It's cultural for them, right? So they're practicing Islam in a cultural way, and or they may be doing that because it's cultural, not Islamic. Yes, they may be a Muslim majority country, but that doesn't mean everything they do is a representation of Islam. So that's another point that I like to bring up all the time is make sure that if you see something, always seek clarification because it could be more of a cultural thing and not an Islamic thing. And that's always important. So I'm from India, the subcontinent. I'm from India. My parents are from India. The way that we practice religion may be a little bit culturally different than how the Arabs would practice the religion, right? Versus how, the convert may practice the religion, right? So as long as culture doesn't go against religion, there's no problem. But once culture goes against religion, that's where you have to draw the line and say, because this is against a religion and against a faith system, we cannot accept this culture. We cannot accept this, doing something in this manner here. So I hope I was able to address those questions and go into some detail, enough detail to help help you all appreciate the different aspects of Islam. And hopefully I didn't go over my time either.
No, you're doing fine. Do you mind if we finish up with a few more questions? Do you have a little longer?
Sure.
We're right at 4 o'clock and there's just a few more. And thank you for saying that. We've talked a lot about how religion is lived and how people live the faith within a culture varies, right? And there are extremes of both ends in every faith that we've studied. We've encountered that. And so, and Islam is no different than Christianity or Judaism in that way, or our own faith.
Yeah.
Okay, James. No, I'm sorry, where were we at? I was busy listening and watching the time. Yeah, James, do you know your next question? Let's just put them there.
What is your favorite thing about being a Muslim?
You know, I think that I don't think we've because as a Muslim, I don't think I think about this very often. Like, what's the favorite thing about being a Muslim? And I'm sure maybe the different faith traditions may not really think about what makes me proud to be Christian, or what makes me proud to be a Jew, or sometimes we take it for granted. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm a Muslim because I'm a Muslim, right? But I think that what really is for me the most important aspect of Islam, or proud of being Muslim, is because Islam promotes the idea of showing love and kindness and compassion to everybody, regardless of their background, regardless of their race, regardless of their who they are and where they come from. None of that matters. I think that's really, really important aspect of our faith that motivates us to get involved in social justice work, and motivates us to get involved in other types of community service works that exist in our society because of that, right? I truly feel that if my faith didn't promote that I would be more hesitant to get involved in some of these community-based works. But my faith promotes it. My faith stands up for it. My faith stands up for those who are being oppressed in any way, in any shape and form. And so I think that aspect of faith is very, very, very powerful for me, and I think it's what motivates me to continue to live as a Muslim, and continue to show people that Islam is truly a religion that promotes peace, that promotes equal rights, that promotes all of us to have a voice, and all of us to have equal rights when it comes to the resources that we have. So
Okay, thank you. And Max has been doing some research on his own, so he has a challenging question, perhaps one that's new that I haven't sent to you ahead of time.
Sure. Sure.
All right. So I've been learning a lot about the Nation of Islam and kind of groups of Islam back in like the 60s, and like with Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, like, what is like the relationship between Black Muslims now and like other Muslims nowadays?
Yeah, sure. So that's man, that's a great question, by the way.
Question.
That's pretty powerful. So the Nation of Islam for the African American Muslim is huge. It is huge. I don't know if you guys watched this, but I was watching this documentary recently. I started watching it, The Black Church, on PBS, and they were talking about how the Black Church was what helped the slaves get through the difficulties and challenges they were experiencing. They came together in church, and that's what sort of kept them together and kept them going. The Nation of Islam. Now think about the 60s, the civil rights movement, right? Think about all that's going on. That, you know, the Black community is still not given the rights that every person should have. So there's a movement. The movement begins by the name of Nation of Islam. Now, the founder of this movement is known as Elijah Muhammad, as you mentioned, and the movement itself was able to empower Black people. That's what it did. Again, it was, it's Nation of Islam, so it has some connection to the tenets of the Islamic faith. But in all reality, it was a different, very different faith system. But any African American Muslim you ask today will say that if it wasn't for the Nation of Islam, I would not be Muslim today. So what we saw is a lot of people, they got involved with the Nation of Islam because it was a civil rights movement. Actually, it was a Black empowerment movement, right? So the Nation of Islam was actually like anti-white. The white man is a devil. That was the, again, back, now you have to understand, back in the 60s and in the 50s and 60s, I mean, it was like they were considered nothing. And so they used this opportunity to consider the white man, the white person, the devil. So there was extremes here. So many got involved with that movement because they felt empowered, including Malcolm X. So Malcolm X, for us, is what we would consider Malcolm X our American Muslim hero. Like, he's our hero. And although Malcolm X, if you read his history, um, he's not truly given, I guess, a good rep in history. People, like, when you think of MLK, right? MLK was the one that who was obviously, Malcolm X and MLK were able to meet, and they did meet. Malcolm X was the softer one, where he stood up, but he stood up powerfully through his words. And Malcolm X was someone who stood up and said, no, like, we're not gonna take this nonsense. Like, so he was a little bit more rough around the edges. Again, because he was associated with the Nation of Islam too, he had a bad rep because of that, because they were known to be, anti-white. But one of the problems with the Nation of Islam, and from a theological perspective, from a faith perspective, is that Elijah Muhammad claimed to be a prophet. And for us, that's a big major component of our faith tradition, that the Prophet Muhammad is the final messenger and there's no messenger or prophet to come after him. So because of that claim, they would not consider to be mainstream Muslims. But for Black Muslims, Black American Muslims, for African American Muslims, the Nation of Islam was the stepping stone to Islam. So a lot of times when we talk about the Nation of Islam within our groups, the African American Muslim will always say, hey, listen, remember, if it wasn't for the Nation of Islam, thousands and hundreds of thousands of us would have never been introduced to Islam itself. And so it's a blessing in some way, but also there were flaws that were exposed later on about the Nation of Islam. And so even the son of Elijah Muhammad, his name is Warithuddin Muhammad. He passed away in Chicago in the 90s. He cut off from his father and exposed some of the things that were happening within the nation. He then accepted mainstream Islam. But in American Muslim history, especially Black American Muslim, African American Muslim, it has a very important role. So I hope I was able to sort of summarize that in a understandable way.
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Noman. You need to watch the show Max is watching right now. He recommended it to me. Go ahead. Do you want to tell him, Max?
Yeah, so I'm watching this show about who killed Malcolm X on Netflix, I think. And so they've been like diving into a lot of that. And then I actually have one more question if we have time for it. I don't know if it will be long or not, but like in the documentary, they talk a lot about people who change their names to Muslim names. So I was wondering, yeah.
You have to change your name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one, I'll say I did watch the documentary right when it came out. I mean, again, for Muslims, like, Malcolm X is like our hero. So and especially for us, like for us who are first generation Muslims in America, we look for like local heroes. Like Malcolm X was American, we're American, we can relate to Malcolm, to some, and in the struggle that he had as American Muslims. So I did watch the documentary and it's amazing. And by the way, quick fact, I don't know if you came across this, but recently there was some revelation about the death of Malcolm X and the killing of Malcolm X, and they're trying to get a reopening of the investigation.
Yes.
The whole idea of the FBI was actually involved in it, and it's just crazy. But when you become Muslim, the question is, do you have to change your name? And the answer to that is no, you don't have to change your name. I think a lot of people end up changing their name because they want it to be a meaningful name. So names in Arabic, they have particular meanings to it. So they'll look for a name that's meaningful. So even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when sometimes parents would come with their children and he would ask, what is their name? If the name of the child didn't have a pleasant meaning to it, the Prophet would say, let's change this child's name to something that has a pleasant meaning. Why? Because the Prophet would also encourage taking good omen from names. So you have a good name, like if your name means flourish, right? For example, then you're gonna flourish in life. Like you're going to experience good. Like your name means blessings, you're gonna experience blessings in your life. So, but if your name was like war, so a lot of times the Arabs would name their kids Harb, which means war. The Prophet would say, no, let's instead of war, let's name him Hassan, which means beautiful, right? So he would encourage good names. The Prophet would encourage good names with good meaning, and he would take good omen from that how that name would impact and hopefully have a good impact on that person or on that child's life. So yeah, so you don't have to change your name. I always tell people that convert who think like, I have to change my name. No, you don't. You don't have to change your name. You can keep your name. You can keep your first name. You can keep your last name. You don't have to take on an quote unquote Arabic name. It's not necessary. Yes.
What does your name mean?
My name Noman, which is actually in Arabic, Noman, comes from the word blessing. Yeah, I hope I'm a blessing.
Well, you have been to us today. Thank you so much. You know, learning about Islam has brought up all sorts of questions, so I appreciate you spending a little longer than when we planned to answer everyone's questions so thoroughly. And yeah, everyone want to take yourself off mute and say thank you before we go today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
Bye.
Really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you in person someday, Noman, again.
Soon.